Meeting to order. The primary purpose is that there is a follow-up from our discussion two meetings ago regarding contracts, procurement, and a couple of questions regarding minority participation and the process. Teresa, I believe you may have had some discussions with your staff. I'm not sure, Daniel and Tamika. Is there anything y'all want to add to the agenda?
I think this presentation will help kind of open up what we discussed. We started, so I think once that's done, we may want to reconvene at another day to add material to it.
Right.
Mr. Davis,
we're ready. So we'll call the meeting together.
Yes, sir. Well, we are here for the committee discussion of the City of Columbia programs for increasing small minority woman-owned business enterprise participation. We have several staff members, team members who will contribute to the conversation today, Mr. Davis, and certainly we're looking for feedback from you and your committee. But this is really a joint effort that the Columbia Water staff, Office of Business Opportunities, and our procurement teams in particular work together on really daily as we are putting together projects throughout the city that we always strive to have SMWBE participation, and know that you and your colleagues are encouraging us to increase that participation in any way that we can. So with that, Mr. Clint Shealy, our Assistant City Manager for Columbia Water, will start the presentation, followed by Melissa Lindler, our Director of the Office of Business Opportunities, and Ms. Juliet Nelly, our Compliance Administrator for the Office of Business Opportunities, and then Ms. Sandra Wright, our Director of Procurement and Contracts, will complete the presentation. And of course, I'm available. Assistant City Manager Gentry, Palin are also available for any questions. Clint?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can y'all see the presentation on your screens?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Great, when technology works. That's good. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank y'all for a little bit of time this afternoon. We appreciate it. And as Ms. Wilson said, we, based on some of the questions were asked and a lot of discussion that we've been having over the last few months, as a team, we wanted to present some of those thoughts and perspectives to you and get some feedback. So we appreciate the opportunity to spend a little bit of time together talking about this very important topic. I'll start off and give a little flavor for our capital improvement program and some of the challenges and opportunities that we see from the water's perspective. And then Melissa Lindler and Juliet Nelly are going to talk about it from the Office of Business Opportunities. They'll give you a little overview of the different programs that we have to encourage participation and hint to some changes that we've been talking about making. Then the procurement and contracts team is going to talk about their role in achieving the overall goals that we've got and some ideas that they brought forth to the table as well. And then Mitzi's going to close us out and kind of summarize and talk about some really important work that we would like to proceed with that will help us in the future, but also summarize those interim steps that each of us will allude to as we go through the process. So she'll kind of bring it home and put a bow on it, but we encourage feedback throughout as we walk through these slides. Just a little flavor for our capital improvement program. Y'all are very familiar with that, and I'm speaking about water, sewer, and stormwater from Columbia Water's perspective, and that is a lot of what we're, a lot of the spend that we have. The annual forecast for infrastructure needs is updated about every 5 years. We update it every year, but we have a 5-year outlook. We also have a 10-year outlook, a very detailed 5-year outlook. And we identify based on the spend and the amount of capital that's available. I think most of you know that we've been having a CIP of around $120 million in the water and sewer space, reduced that to $80 million last year. We're looking at a $40 million spend this year just based on some impacts of COVID. But again, hoping to ramp back up in the future and to be able to meet our infrastructure needs. So a lot of dollars funneling through, and you're also aware of all the stormwater work that we're doing based on the stormwater fees and the green bond issuance that we had from a few years ago. So when we identify these important projects, we work with OBO and procurement to try to identify the proper program that project might fit into, whether it's mentor protege or whether it's the Columbia Disadvantaged Business Enterprise program. And these are both professional service contracts, but also the construction opportunities that are designed in those professional service contracts. So I wanted to mention some protege-only projects that we're moving forward with. That's an initiative that we've collaboratively come up with. We have, I think, 4 protege-only designs on one of our recent council meetings for the first time. Really excited about that, and we're also looking at some protege-only construction-type projects in the future. But I want everybody to know that meeting the established goals is a very high priority for all of us that are presenting today and all of us with city staff. We understand clearly that is a high priority for you. Therefore, it's a very high priority for us as well. That speaks to the capital budget. I wanted to speak just a little bit about our operation and maintenance budget, our annual budget that you approve each year. We do fund a good bit of work out of that, and some of the things that we're looking at and you've approved in the past are indefinite delivery contracts for road restoration, whether it be asphalt or concrete restoration. Moving forward, we're looking at a protege-only category, allocating a portion of that work below $100,000 to protege only, so we can be responsive to our customer needs and also help those protege businesses that we've identified. Water line repair work, leak repairs. We've also moved forward with some grouping of work and packaging. We're looking to move forward with an indefinite delivery contract model this coming year, and working with proteges, mentors and proteges working together to make sure the proteges are getting the experience they need so that then they'll be deemed qualified to do some of those water line repairs on their own, above and beyond the asphalt and concrete restoration, actually making those main line taps and doing those water line repairs as protege-only projects. So we're going to be intentional about making sure they get the experience they need so that they're ready to do that moving forward. I wanted to mention a couple of challenges and then a couple of opportunities that we collectively see. One of the big challenges that we run into from the utility perspective are short time frames, whether it's a compliance schedule that's consent decree driven or potentially water quality driven or capacity, potentially moratorium driven projects. We've got to get them done. We've got to get them done quickly. And so that drive to get the projects done quickly can be a challenge when you're layering in compliance programs as well and making sure we've got opportunities. So we've got to be well ahead of the game and up front, and we work really hard to do that, to identify the right programs and to get the right participation that we need. Another challenge is a lot of our projects are very complex. We're moving into a period where we're doing some really, really large infrastructure work. And so sometimes when we have large projects, we'll get out of region, out of state bidders coming in and bidding and competing for our work. We've got to make sure they know what our programs are and how they can compete for that work if they're going after those complex projects. But project complexity plays into it as well. So having qualified contractors that can bond and do some of the really big complex work that we've got going on, whether it be at our plants or in our collection or distribution system, can present a challenge. Certainly funding restrictions, if we're using federal funds, FEMA dollars, that creates a challenge on being able to use certain ones of our programs. Availability of qualified contractors, that kind of dovetails with complexity of projects. and also the amount of work that DOT has on the street right now. That's eating up some of our hauling and demolition and that type of contracting capacity locally. And then finally, a challenge being clarity for bidders so that they understand that we're looking for a really good value. We're looking for that low bid, but we're also looking for them to meet our goals. And so providing that clarity, particularly for folks that are new to our bidding environment, can be a challenge sometimes. And those are challenges that we collectively talk about and think about how can we together overcome those. Some of the opportunities that are out there are where it's not compliance or capacity driven or where complexity doesn't dictate, dividing what might be a larger project into several smaller projects to make sure local companies are having the opportunity to bid on those. And we want to do that, and we actively engage in that discussion pretty much each time a project comes forward. Breaking it into smaller pieces can be, again, a schedule challenge. If you're schedule driven, it can add some project manager responsibilities. But there are quite a few projects that we have that don't have those drivers that we can divide into small projects. So we treat each one on a case-by-case basis and work together to make sure we're doing something that makes sense and can help us move forward. I think the communication between ODO and procurement and Columbia Water and all the team is really, really good, but there's always an opportunity to improve communication. So that's part of what we're trying to do as well. And then Melissa and Sandra are going to talk about some potential modifications to our programs to encourage or enforce participation with the goals that are established. So I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa and let her walk through some of those programs, and she'll start hinting at some of those changes that we may want to make. So Melissa, let me know when you'd like me to advance your slides, and I'll move them forward for you, okay?
Thank you so much, Clint. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share some of the great innovative things that OBO, the City of Columbia, Columbia Water and Procurement, and really the city as a whole has done to make sure that we provide opportunities for our small minority and women-owned business enterprises. And I say that, next slide. One thing I don't want to leave out is the initiative that our city manager actually started in 2016, and that was the citywide goal that at that time she set at 10%. And we actually met that goal for the first time in fiscal year 17 and 18. And we surpassed the goal actually in 18 and 19. Before the final closeout, it was at 12.09%, but after everything was closed out and any existing POs that needed to be disencumbered were done. So the goal was actually at 16.94%. So we actually exceeded even the 50% goal that we have right now that she actually put in place in September of last year. Our current number, and again, keep in mind our books are not closed yet, is at 12.61%. And those are actual dollars spent. So as, again, things are disencumbered, that number will again go up. And I'm hoping that we're looking at 15, if not 16% again for last fiscal year. So just keep that in mind, that it's not just about the compliance programs that we have. It's about the whole effort that the city has taken upon itself through our leadership to make sure that we're providing opportunities for everyone, whether you're in construction or in professional services, or you're providing other types of products or services to the city, consulting, goods and materials, office supplies. So we're looking at landscaping, any opportunity that exists where we can make sure that we're providing an inclusive procurement path for all of our citizens here in Columbia and throughout our combined statistical area. Clint mentioned about the CIP list. So I'm not going to go over and repeat anything that he said, but it does start there. That CIP list is done way before the fiscal year starts, and we are included in that process. we're looking at the programs along with Columbia Water, as well as with procurement, to make sure that they're the best fit for the program. And keep in mind, it does change. Once we look at projects or a little deeper, engineer will say, we had to make this modification, or we need to change the scope in some way. We'll adjust, and we may change it to another project or another compliance program. So we're flexible. We're making sure that the programs are doing what they're supposed to do. And all of this requires adjustments. And especially with COVID, we've had to make some other adjustments as well. In terms of that, before I go to the next bullet, I did want to say you're going to hear a lot in this presentation as Juliet picks up for me. The opportunities that exist, yes, but also how we go about identifying projects and our programs and why it's the best fit. So we're going to really dive into the actual calculations for our CDBE projects, and also some of the programmatic areas for MPP and some of the changes that we've made there. What I also want you to remember, you're going to hear a lot about capacity building. You heard it from Clint. You're going to hear it here. There are other ways that we can build capacity too. And I say that in terms of additional resources that we have now been awarded through our EA COVID grant, so that we can help not only those in construction, but maybe someone else that had to pivot their business, small minority women-owned businesses, to give them additional capital to help them recover and mitigate some of the challenges caused by COVID, but also to provide more training opportunities for our proteges, our DBEs, to help build their capacity so that they're able to go after larger contracts. So just keep that in mind. So there's a lot of things that we have going on, but as Clint has said, and as you always heard, it is a collective effort through everybody, not just the 3 offices on the phone, but really throughout the city. So, and again, thank you for your leadership. So once we actually work with Columbia Water and we actually identify the most appropriate program to place on a project, working with engineering, we then assign that project with one of our programs. And it's either going to be an MPP, Columbia Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, or an SOP. And I will let Juliet pick up from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you everyone for tuning in today to hear more about our programs and learn more about our programs. So the first program that Melissa and Clint talked about, I wanted to talk to you about was MPP, which is our Mentor Protege project program. And basically, I just wanted to kind of get to, like Melissa said, get your understanding of MPP program in regards to that we have 2 areas, which is construction services as well as professional services. And on your screen right now, we're showing the current number of construction service teams at 12 and your professional services teams at 52. So we worked very hard. If you notice, there's different divisions for construction and professional services with our MPP advisory committee and members of, or I should say, different people from MPP that are in the program to find the best fit for mentors and proteges in both construction services and professional services. So with that said, professional services, their proteges can have 2 mentors in each of the 5 teams listed on our screen right there. Water treatment, wastewater treatment, water division, wastewater collection, and stormwater. That gives them the possibility of up to 10 possible teams. Now, mentors can only have 1 protege in each of the 5 divisions. And you may ask, well, why is that different? Because I'll talk about construction a little bit more too, but it's different because we had a need where we had a lot of mentors that were in-state, coming from out of state, that really wanted to get involved in our program, but were unable to do so because we had a shortage of local proteges because we just had so many mentors. So after discussions with our MPP advisory committee and just different people who participate in MPP, we had a discussion for professional services to allow them to have 2 mentors in each of the 5 divisions. Now for construction services, it's their team is actually one mentor, one protege, and they can have one team in each of their 2 divisions. So where professional services could possibly have 10, construction could have 2. And we did talk to construction about that. Again, the MPP Advisory Committee, I believe Ms. Wilson was there when we talked about doing that for construction services, but I think in the best interest of construction services, they agreed to just keep it to the 2 divisions and 1 team per division. Some more things that I wanted to talk about were the MPP program guidelines, changes to our guidelines in 2019. Again, this program the guidelines were created in 2014 and have really been revamped in 2019. So we really wanted to highlight a lot of the changes that took place to our guidelines. So for the first one, we talk about increasing protege percentage based on project. So normally in the past, we would just say, the mentor was responsible to ensure that their protege received 20% minimum of the overall project total on MPP projects. We've kind of went ahead and raised the bar a little bit and said, you know what, let's do a 20% minimum, but you can always go over. So that was one of the items that we did change in our guidelines. And we also allowed more professional service mentors to easily find available proteges and form MPP teams. As I said earlier, we allowed them to have 2 proteges to have 2 mentors to resolve that problem. We also worked with legal to remove arbitration in our guidelines. We had arbitration and mediation, but again, we removed arbitration and kept mediation because we want to make sure that if there's a small or minority firm and they're having, they work with a mentor who may work in California, that they don't have to go and travel and bear the expense of traveling to California for mediation or arbitration or anything like that. So all that we changed that so that stays here in South Carolina. So again, our small businesses don't incur any, costs for that. Prompt payment language, we made sure that we adhered to the city policy. So we added that in, as well as teams must submit on at least 1 project within a year, or they may be removed from the program. And that was really for not a team, but maybe a protege or a mentor may have been sitting as an approved protege or an approved mentor, but they never formed a team. And you can't bid on city projects if you're not part of a team. So we really want to encourage people when they are approved as a mentor or approved as a protege to go ahead and form that team and start bidding on City of Columbia projects. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Let's see. So some of the other changes that we had to our guidelines. That Clint. Okay. So, sorry about that, Clint. I think it would go. Yep, right there. Thank you. So proteges must be notified of change orders, contract amendments, and just given the opportunity to be part of that change. So right now, in the past, they were not aware of any change orders or any amendments. They may have if their mentor approached them about the change order or the contract, but now we make it kind of almost mandatory for the mentor to kind of go in front of the protege, explain to them a possible new scope of work, and make sure that that protege is the first person that they ask before they go to other subcontractors. So make sure that the protege signs off on those change orders now and those contract amendments, and that we, just don't have a 20% goal in the beginning for the MPP proteges, but it's actually throughout the duration of the project. So we're watching that as well on change orders and contract amendments. The other part was existing proteges applying to become a mentor. We had some very experienced proteges that have been in the field for a couple decades. They were looking to enhance their skills and possibly bring up other small minority or women-owned businesses as proteges. And I just thought that when we spoke about it at our advisory board, they agreed that it would just behoove us to help increase that capacity by giving them the option to become a mentor earlier before graduation, and then bring in another protege to mentor. So proteges in the program who are ready to become a mentor prior to 2022, the graduation date, and who have been in the program for a minimum of 4 years, can complete an application process, which is really almost identical to our mentor application, with just a few following exceptions, which is the protege, again, they must be in the program for a minimum of 4 years. The protege must also provide an extra 3 years of water and sewer projects. So normally for a mentor, somebody coming out of state or somebody in state who just wants to be a mentor, they would just have to show us 5 projects of water and sewer projects. For these proteges that are now going to become mentors, they are actually going to have to supply 5 plus an extra 3. On top of that, working with very closely with Columbia Water, we agreed that usually when it comes to mentor protege, we have a checklist. We know what it takes for them to be a mentor, what it takes for them to be a protege. However, we really thought it was important to get the buy-in from Columbia Water as well as to how well this protege could perform as a mentor on city projects. So not only do we sign off on it, we also have Columbia Water and Clint's team sign off on it as well. So the difference is also the existing proteges, their 3 most recent years gross revenue for water and sewer projects must equal or exceed 1.75 million for professional services, or 2.5 million for construction services within water and sewer projects. So that's a little bit different than the mentor and protege criteria. But again, these are people who are, who have been in the field for a long time and have a lot of experience. And we really have them go through a not lengthy application, but we really are ensuring that they know what they're doing with our checklist as well as Columbia Water's. So one of the things we talked about was MPP graduation. So our MPP graduation is set for October 2022. So right now we have had 2 construction firms that have actually graduated early from a protege to a mentor, and that was Stutz & Williams, LLC Construction. Since the 2019 changes, we've also had Lake Murray Utility Construction. They were a protege and they have become a mentor since then.
Juliet, let's take a quick pause. I know it's really difficult, Mr. Davis, probably on the Zoom to see if hands are raised, and Erica can probably monitor that feature if someone's doing it, electronically through Zoom, raising their hand. But did you want us to pause and answer any questions, or do you want your colleagues to just note all their questions and we wait to the end?
Oh, no, they can ask questions. I'm fine with that.
Okay, and Mr. Davis, how do you want to handle that?
I think that's fine. I'll leave it up to Daniel and Tamika. If it's lengthy, we don't want to prolong the meeting, but
I know the presentation is a little lengthy, so I didn't want to. I could take breaks here and there if y'all have questions so far.
I got a question, Councilman Davis. Will here. Can staff speak to how we generate participation in our protege outlets? I mean, are mentors sourcing and bringing up protege companies, or are we? I know, Melissa, I know you go out and really create those relationships as well. Can we speak to that just to educate me as a new council member on the Community and Economic Development Subcommittee, Sam, just so you know that. And also to everybody that might be watching this about all the hard work that goes into creating these relationships and participation.
Thank you. It is a lot of work, but one thing about it, we do have partners and we do work directly through the South Carolina Department of Transportation, as well as the South Carolina Division on Minority Contracting and Certifications. They have DBEs there, and you'll hear from Juliet shortly about how we calculate our CDBE goals. So we use their database actually to make sure that their participants know about our programs. We invite them to our trainings. We may reach out to them directly If we see that there's a connection between what they're doing and what we're doing, what we're trying to do to help them, improve their capacity to actually participate in different programs that we have, but also one day to become a mentor or prime on a project. We have trainings. Last year, we held a contractor readiness training for waterline construction. And what we're planning on doing this year is to pick up from that training, still utilizing those participants to take them to the next level. Hopefully one day they'll be able to actually get their waterline license themselves so that they can actually be even more of an asset, not only to their company, but also to the city of Columbia. So even if they don't have their waterline license, there's still areas that they can be a protege without that license. So it's an opportunity to bring them in, to help them identify a mentor and the right mentor. So we have to know the personalities too, right, of the mentors, and we have to get to know the personality of the proteges too, to make a good fit. So we try to match them up, but some of them actually know each other. They actually match themselves up. The relationships that they have are very, very significant. We had a number of mentors and proteges when it was time to change teams, because that is part of our guidelines. They actually called and said, we don't want to change teams. We want our mentor, or we want the protege to stay with us because they've had such a good working relationship. So, the relationship still continues. So even if they had to change teams, which they had to do, they're still working together on other projects. It may not even be city projects. It may be something through the county. And that's another partner that we have. This, the Richland County, the administration, the Small Business Development Center, Women's Business Center that just started at Benedict. So we're looking at every way that we can partner, especially now with technology being the main way of communicating, and no face-to-face direct meetings going on, but how we can still generate an interest in our programs. We're also looking at national outlets that we can utilize to bring in maybe some more mentors into the area that may have the capacity to come in, especially minority mentors. We only have one minority mentor in construction right now. So it's a female, actually, a minority female. So we want to look at ways that we can generate interest with everyone and to bring in some, people that may look like the proteges or look like people that we're trying to help become proteges. So they say, well, they look like me, they can identify with me, and maybe that's an area I do want to go into. I saw myself there, but now that I see someone that looks like me doing that work, I can do it too. So we're looking at every outlet, and it does take constant communication, not only with our partners, but also, constant communication with our participants, because they know each other, they work together, but looking at ways that we can actually generate more interest into our programs.
And as we come across, I'm sorry to interject real quick, Melissa, but as we interact and come across folks that are interested, are you the best contact for us?
Yes,
to send?
please, me or Juliet, either one of us. We work together.
And what's your website?
Is www.columbiasc.gov/OBO.
Perfect. Thank you.
And our number to the office, which someone will answer, is 803-545-3326. I just gave out my number. They can call that too. But 803-545-3950 is the direct line to the office. And we have all of our phones transferred to our cell phones. We will answer the call.
3326 takes you to the decision maker. Just remember that. So.
Yes. Thanks, Councilman.
Thank you for that wonderful.
Melissa's very, very passionate councilman about making these connections with our small minority and women-owned businesses, which we've always had great leadership and staff in OBO. I will say in the last few years since Melissa's been with us, they're really trying to take it to another level. And I think her passion really shows. It's just a genuine caring there about trying to we're not perfect, and we're trying to today get lots of feedback from you all, but that's a big part of it, is having a staff who is genuinely concerned about these folks' ability to build their capacity.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
So now we're gonna get into some of the numbers, it looks like, Juliet, right?
Yes, ma'am, we are. I'm just going to go over and we're going to do them together.
Okay.
Actually, I'm just going to start here. So in 18-19 and fiscal year 18 and 19, fiscal year 19-20, keep in mind, you're going to see why the dollar amount changed so much. And this goes back to the dollar amount in terms of MPP projects, in terms of CDBE projects from year to year. And keep in mind what Clint mentioned earlier, when there are federal programs or federal projects out there, we do not put a compliance related program on those projects. So just depending on where our priorities are, what projects are going through procurement at the time, we may or may not have a compliance related program on some of those projects because of the federal guidelines. But in fiscal year 18 and 19, the total dollars awarded to MPP programs was $31,604,904. Excuse me, that's a lot of money. In 19, it was $17,590,884.31. The amount that was awarded to proteges in fiscal year 18 and 19 was $7,266,298.30. And in fiscal year 19 and 20, it did go down to $3,595,782.25. So we did have less money in 19 and 20, or less projects that were designated as MPP projects in 19 and 20. Therefore, the number of dollars awarded to our proteges went down. And of course, the number or the percentage was 22.99% in 18-19, and 19-20, it was 20.44%. What's interesting is how the total dollars awarded to non-minority women proteges, that number seems to be consistent. It did not change. It was $1,694,706 in 18-19, and it still remained at 1.6 million in 19 and 20. The percentage, however, it increased from 18-19 and 19-20 from 5.36% to 9.45%. Now, the total dollars to minority proteges went from $1,321,384 to $103,280. Now, some of this has to do with a number of our minority proteges have not signed back up into the program. Some of them have decided to go after more of our CDBE projects directly, which is still good because they feel like this program has served their purpose, and they actually want to go out and be primes on their own projects. And some of them, one in particular, has been very, very successful with that. He was part of the program since it started. So he's still a protege, but he's not actively on a team. And we do have a number of our proteges that we still are trying to match up with mentors right now. And keep in mind, again, the switch occurred in October of 2019. So we were 5 months into making those matches occur. And then some things did stop. It was a pause, but we are still making that contact and trying to increase participation, especially bringing in more minority proteges. And you will see more ads about our programs, not only here locally throughout our combined statistical area. We're going to do more of that type of outreach, more social media. I hope you all like your newsletters you're getting from OBO. I haven't seen any responses to tell us to take you off the mailing list. So hopefully you like the information that we're sharing. But that's one way that we're utilizing. But understand too that it's going to take more than that. It's still going to take some more direct one-on-one interaction. and some more outreach, not only within our combined statistical area, those 8 counties, but also looking outside of the state too, maybe to bring in some more talent into the area and more so that we can share these dollars a bit further. So it went from 4.18% to 0.6% in 1920, but we are currently, as Clint mentioned again earlier, we have a number of protege only and protege led projects this fiscal year. We started the fiscal year off strong, so I'm sure that number has already gone up. But it does, again, it's about building the capacity. So we have proteges there that are ready, they're willing, and they're able to do the work, and they're stepping up to the plate. And Columbia Water has been great at helping us identify those programs, or I'm sorry, those projects that would allow our proteges to gain additional experience and capacity building as well. Thank you. Juliet.
Okay, so let's kind of wrapped up our MPP, our Mentor Protege program. I just want to talk to you a little bit about our CDBE, which is our Columbia Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. So I want to talk to you kind of like from inception of how projects are designated as CDBE. So we have a methodology that is actually used by SCDOT. It's very similar. So we have water and sewer, any type of water and sewer projects, or really any city project that comes across our desk that's over $200,000 needs to fill out. They need to fill out what we call a subcontracting form. So it talks about the different types of subcontracting opportunities, how much those are, how much the project is total, and it also deals with NAICS codes, which is basically just a classification code for your specific type of business. And the next slide, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth as far as how we calculate the CDBE methodology. We hear a lot of times people are like, well, where do you come up with these numbers from? So I want to tell you, it is a very manual, it's a very lengthy process. And we check and triple check ourselves between myself, Latanya Germany, and Melissa Lindler. We go over these many times. So just to kind of give you an idea, so we calculate availability. We go out and for like the number of DBEs. So we actually go to the SCDOT website and pull all the DBEs that are ready, willing, and able in our 8-county CSA. We go out to the governor's office, SMBCC, and we do the same thing. We pull all those ready, willing, and able businesses out of SMBCC in our 8-county region. And then we also do the same for our City of Columbia eBid software as well. We take those 3 entities and we add those together, and then we divide it by a number of all the total firms in the South Carolina 8-county CSA. So, and that's through FactFinder, that's on the census. And then that will tell us for each anticipated subcontracting area. Now for our weight, we actually, we use each anticipated subcontracting area. Like I mentioned earlier, we have either Columbia Water or whatever department is turning in that over $200,000 project. We take that form, and on there is each anticipated subcontracting area cost. And we take that and divide it by the project cost total, and that gives us our weight. So then we also have relative availability. And to get that number, we take the availability of all of our ready, willing, and able DBEs, and we multiply that by the weight for each anticipated subcontracting area. So you may have one area that's maybe not weighted very heavily, and then you may have another area that's weighted extremely heavy. So once we take those, we combine all the sums of each subcontracting area for their sum of relativity of availability, and then for each anticipated subcontracting area, once we get that determines our goal. And then we take that goal, and again, like I said, Latanya and I work on that. We bring it to Melissa, we discuss it. After that, we take it back to the project owner who brought it to us. You know, if that's Columbia Water and Clint's group, we take it back to them. And, you know, we have discussions on, okay, these are the numbers, you know, do you think that this is feasible? Do you think that this is an obtainable goal? Because we never want to set a goal that can't be obtained. So that's basically how we calculate the methodology. Now, this next slide I want to show to you, this is actually a sample or example of a CDBE goal calculation sheet. So when I was talking about the availability and the weight and adding up all the numbers of DBE firms and then dividing that by the number of total firms, that all comes from the sheet to produce that goal using relative availability, which does give us our percentage. And I know Ms. Wilson will tell you sometimes, we go over our percentage. Sometimes we agree that maybe the percentage is a little high, and we always try to make sure that we're kind of pushing forward and not setting low expectations, but making those percentages obtainable. So then we have CDBE projects. As I said earlier, the goals reviewed by myself and Melissa. We discuss it with engineering again, and then we go back to the person who submitted it. And then once we agree and the percentage is established, OBO, we actually create a memo, and then it's contained the percentage along with the CDBE methodology, as well as that sheet that I mentioned earlier that has all the subcontracting areas. And we actually send that to the ACMs, Ms. Gentry and ACM Sheely, for their approval and signatures. And then after that, it goes to Ms. Wilson for her approval.
Thank you, Juliet. Ms. Wilson, do you want to take a break for questions, or that was a lot of calculations? And
yes, it was. Why don't you all go through the dollars awarded real quick, and then we'll see if there are any questions.
Sure. So you'll see here again, it varies from year to year based on the funding source, whether or not we actually assign a compliance related program. The same goes for CDBE projects. So in fiscal 18 and 19, we actually had a number of dollars awarded to CDBE projects totaling $72,242,151.65. In 1920, it went down to $11,545,119.10. And the total dollars awarded to our CDBEs was $7,492,190.34 in 1819. And in 1920, it was $2,664,194.18. What's significant here again is that even though the number decreased from one fiscal year to the next, the amount of money that the percentage of dollars that went to CDBEs actually increased from 9.45% to 23.07%. So even though the dollar amount was reduced, the percentage of what was awarded that went to our CDBEs actually increased, which is still good and is significant and shows that we're heading in the right direction. Next slide, Juliet.
Let's see if there are any questions real quick, Juliet. Okay. I'm sorry, regarding the CDBE calculations.
My question's not really around calculations. It's really to understand more kind of the breakdown of the work on how it spreads across the different departments and how we're capturing that. We've all had several conversations about how to increase participation local, both in women and minority-owned businesses in our community. And there are, I think, a lot of different discussions, and I think it would help us to understand kind of where we are today. I know the Mentor Protege program, and we've had this discussion more, we wish it was growing faster and quicker. It's a long process. But are there other opportunities throughout our system? I have been out and about, walking, driving, doing a lot lately, and a lot of the challenges that we have is being able to fix holes after repairs and things like that. And that's an ongoing, lifelong job that could truly create some growth. And I start looking at that and thinking, well, how many of those type of situations do we have in the city that help us deliver services quicker, but also at the same time grow businesses without having to affect their bonding and insurance and all those things they have to do to really get to some of these bigger contracts, which unfortunately is a lot of it. So, you know, it'd be great to see how it's broken down and then go back and reevaluate what we have and say, hey, what can we do here to create? I mean, ongoing contracts for quick meter fixes, you know, all the road construction things where we've had to dig up yards, this and that, replantings. I mean, the list goes on, and it's stuff that our staff deals with every day of the week, and it's going from department to department. Anyway, I think those would be some good things to look at.
Yes, Councilman Rickman, I think you're going to hear some possible solutions towards the end of the presentation, how we can get that that picture of what we currently have in place, what resources we have in place, and where our gaps are, and how do we make sure everything's connected. And that's going to be addressed later on throughout in the presentation from Ms. Gentry. But I will say Columbia Water and OBO and procurement, we're looking at projects too, just like you mentioned, and that is making sure that we're breaking projects down. If it's a huge project, how can we break that project down into smaller pieces? Clint earlier as a possible solution to get more minority participation, but also to help grow the capacity of our firms. So that's some things that we're talking about. We're discussing that, the connectivity between different departments, how we make that work better. But I will say that we're communicating very, very, very effectively now. And I think that the discussions that will go, procurement and with it will only improve that and improve our opportunities, not only to revamp our programs, but also to see what other types of programs we can initiate to help improve our ability to build the capacity of our firms out there, our small businesses.
Councilman, this is Clint. I wanted to interject. It's a great comment, and I know you and I have discussed that a few times. What you've seen is we moved to a model in the last fiscal year of kind of sweeping up service line leaks and restorations and lower priority things, work orders that had accumulated and sweeping them up into a package that was bid out under the Mentor Protege program. And that has been effective for us, although it takes a while to do that. What we're looking to move toward this fiscal year is an indefinite delivery contract where we may have some protege only portions of that, but have contractors essentially on call that they can work on those issues as they arise. And I agree with you. It is a great opportunity for a local or a DBE contractor that's in our area to have a steady diet of work that will serve our customers, will help us get repairs and restorations made quickly to be able to respond to our customers and meet your goals as well. So that's the model that we're looking at moving into this fiscal year, and we've been working with Melissa and the procurement team to make that a reality moving forward. So I'll stop there.
Anyway, this is Sam. I think Daniel kind of capsulized a bit of my questions. Let me ask this in terms of building capacity in the number of areas that where we're trying to bring more folks into the web. Are the technical schools near us doing anything? Are they supplying? Is there a line from them to us as a municipality with the types of jobs, minus the professional side? Are we utilizing them? Is there a real partnership with them?
I've actually been in contact with tech about just that, creating some type of program where we actually, it's almost like a feeder, a pipeline, either for their graduates or for people that are taking different courses that have an interest in water and sewer. So that's something that we discuss. We do partner with them with our fast track program and some other areas, but that has been something that came up. And it's interesting because you mentioned that Richland County Library right here on Assembly Street, they have been very, very innovative in providing additional resources, not only for their patrons, but also for people that may be in need of assistance, the homeless population, working with them with job training. So we have looked at Midlands Tech, OBO, and Richland County Library about how can we do something to help build that capacity as well, while we're also working with our small minority and women-owned businesses through some type of partnership. So that's there. We're trying to, again, utilize all of our resources and do it effectively, especially with the budget crunch that we're all experiencing right now. But Midlands Tech is always willing to partner with us, and especially Richland County Library. They're ready, they're eager to do it too. So it's just putting some type of program together that we can make that happen. The other part of this is getting more specific with different areas. And Clint, I don't think you mentioned this one yet, was maybe how do we provide opportunities, more hands-on opportunities for interested small minority and women-owned businesses to learn how to do water lines and to learn how to do taps. And that would be actual hands-on training that we provide. Could we partner, and Clint mentioned this, maybe we partner with the Midlands Tech or somewhere where we can have this outside area to do that type of training, assimilation training, to help build the capacity of those that are already maybe in the water and sewer industry, but they want to expand, or someone that has an interest in doing that type of work. So those are some things that we've talked about. Clint, I don't know if you want to share anything else, because I know you reach out to the different, our different partners as well.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. I do think it's important to, to try to grow that base and seize every opportunity that we have to fill that pipeline. So as I think you use that terminology, fill the pipeline, so that we've got younger folks interested in coming into our industry, maybe not, working for us directly, but also working in the contracting community, and then able to graduate and have their own businesses and do these things. So a lot of different opportunities there. It's and you mentioned some of the hands-on training that I think it would be helpful, and whether that happens through a formal program or whether that's a formal training assignment. We did some really good classroom work. Your group did some really good classroom work last year, and in terms of managing projects, bidding projects, and I think that was really helpful. Got a lot of great reviews, but how you translate that into real world construction. I know there was a field component of that, but you get to a different level of complexity that we probably ought to be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if there are no other questions right now, we'll continue with good faith efforts. This is a really key component, Mr. Davis and council members, that I want y'all to kind of tune into.
So back when the CDBE program was created, we built in good faith efforts. So to ensure that the bidders or proposers were achieving the CDBE goal that we set on the project, or if they didn't meet or achieve that goal, they would provide us some type of document in good faith to where the goal could not be met, or where they could not obtain local CDBEs. So we make sure that if the bidder cannot achieve this City of Columbia's approved CDBE or DBE project specific percentage, that the good faith efforts are shown And they show us where they have tried to make efforts to reach out to our local CDBEs in our 8-county area. They do think we review items such as call logs, emails, letters, newspaper ads, and they need to make sure that they, it's a very lengthy process to review, but it's very needed. It's a necessity to ensure that they're reaching out to our local CDBEs. And if we review those and we find that they're valid, and maybe for that portion of work they couldn't find any CDBEs, we do allow them to use certified DBEs from a certifying agency such as SCDOT or SMBCC. Working internally with Columbia Water, with a committee, we get together as a committee and we review all the good faith efforts. We also have been working with legal to ensure that our good faith efforts are like less subjective, but more objective. So it isn't, well, maybe they could have, it's more of a yes or no type scenario. And then in our review, an example of verification is the review of quotes, for example, sent by maybe a qualified CDBE or DBE, because we want to look that over and ensure that if the bidder couldn't achieve the COC approved project specific percentage, that good faith efforts are shown, and that if they're valid, they can use, like I said, those CDBEs and DBEs, but we want to ensure that that there's no unlawful or discriminatory reasons that they're not using a local CDBE or DBE. And then good faith efforts continued. So currently, we're OBO, we're working internally with Clint and his group on evaluating good faith efforts when the goals are not met. But futuristically, we are looking for the good faith efforts to basically ensure that their efforts prior to the bidding process. So that would look like now we wait and then we have a bid opening, and then we actually get all their good faith efforts after the fact. Just to be a little bit more proactive, we'd really like to look through and help walk through somebody who's maybe having problems finding CDBEs, or with their good faith efforts, ensuring that they really are putting forth that good faith effort to reach out to our local CDBEs and DBEs. And just to alleviate any confusion that someone may have in regards to the good faith efforts, and to diminish any type of avoidable legal conflicts.
Thank you, Juliet. So opportunities for increasing the CDBE goal attainment, as Juliet mentioned, the good faith effort is certainly a priority of ours to not only revisit, but make sure that our efforts in implementing our programs doesn't cause any undue conflicts with our procurement process. So by having the good faith effort on the front end prior to the bid opening, that hopefully will help alleviate that concern. Also, as we mentioned earlier, one way that we can certainly help increase our CDBE goal attainment is making sure, especially for those interested bidders from out of town, out of state, know about our program. We need to do a better job at fully explaining and highlighting the program, CDBE program, in CDBE projects and what it means, why it's there, the intent and purpose of the program, so that there's not any misunderstanding about what the CDBE is and what we're expecting our bidders to do if they're willing to bid on this project. The other part is linking directly to CDBE directory, to our CDBE directory, the DBE directory of both SCDOT and the South Carolina Division on Small Minority Business Contracting and Certification, and making sure those links are also included in the bid documents for all of our CDBE projects. So I think with this, you can never have enough information, especially for someone that's not familiar with the programs that your city offers if they're trying to participate in the bidding process. So one thing is about explaining the process, using our resources that we have available to us now. One, to revisit our good faith efforts, making those stronger, making it more current, to where we're utilizing technology more so than paper trails and ads in newspapers, still doing some of that, but not to the extent that is required now through our CDBE guidelines. So those are some things hopefully we can do and we plan to do to help increase the number of those bidders meeting our CDBE goals that we put on projects. Thank you.
I think the reason to Councilman Davis and council members that it's really become apparent to me that we need to revisit when the good faith efforts are reviewed is because, as you know, with procurements, and we always let you all know, once a procurement is gone to bid and that process has reached the point where procurement really needs to take over as far as seeing it through and determining the low bidder and all of that, no one else should be involved with that. And what's happening, I'm noticing that whole process of determining the availability, that methodology Juliet went through with you, the staff does a really good job of figuring out the availability and weighting those numbers and coming up with the percentage that we say should be the goal for CDBE participation for a project. We come up with that number, and then in a couple of instances, I'll find, we get ready to put the projects on council's agenda for approval. And I'll say, well, why didn't they meet the percentage that we knew was attainable? Well, they'll say they said their good faith efforts that demonstrate that they tried, but they couldn't. And so I'm beginning to feel like, I'm sure that is the case sometimes, but to Melissa's point, I feel good about the methodology they're using, so that percentage ought to be met. But if we get respondents who say they met good faith efforts, there's not a whole lot that we can then do about that. And again, these are goals as of right now. So we're going to get into doing the disparity study. And that will sort of help lay the foundation why we can move away from it being a goal where we have only the reliance on a good faith effort being shown to a requirement. But I know some of you have questions about those percentages and why they are what they are sometimes, and why it seems like maybe they haven't been met in time.
I've got one that it's more of a tail end question, but I'd like to put it out there now. In terms of, I guess, response or answers to the good faith effort, are we hearing that there are no qualified folks, or what? Are we saying, or are we discovering that there's a deficit in the small and minority businesses that meet the qualified definition?
I'll let Melissa speak to that, but again, it goes to that formula that they went through with you, and they really look to see if the availability is there or not for qualified contractors. I think one thing that availability means in the system they're available, and the staff had to break this down the other day when we were talking about this, it may not mean that they're available right now. Like if they are doing another job and so they really aren't available. We don't have any way of knowing that per project who's actually available. So Melissa, you want to talk about that?
Sure. And what Ms. Wilson's referring to. So when we do our formula, we do it based on availability in terms of those with the capacity to do the work in a certain subcontracting area. Availability in terms of, do they have the time to do the work, or if they're available, already working on a project that's taking up most of their time, that's different. So there's no real way of us actually being able to put that into our formula because there's not anything out there that has someone's schedule, that schedules, whether or not it shows you that you have a DBE that's available in terms of time to actually perform this work. What we get is not necessarily that they do not have the capacity to do the work, Councilman Davis. It's just that they said that they reached out and they didn't get responses. And so I think by us, and the case, I don't necessarily think that's the case. What I think is the case is that we need to strengthen our actual good faith efforts so we do not leave room for those types of things to happen in terms of someone not being responsive. If someone reaches out or they put out information about, hey, we're about to go out after this project, we have these subcontract areas available, we have an interest for CDBE and participation, we would like for you to participate. So I think by us actually modifying and adjusting our good faith efforts and making them stronger, where we actually put more, there's more, the burden of proof is actually on the bidder to really show and illustrate that they did that outreach that they say they did, the contact was made, and that's what we're in the process of doing now, is strengthening those guidelines so we don't leave it up for interpretation. We actually put the information out there, we streamline that process, we make the process a little simpler, but more defining at the same time. So I don't think it's about they lack the capacity, but I think that our guidelines right now and the good faith efforts leave room for certain outreach that should be taking place that's not actually taking place.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
That's a really key point that we've all struggled with over the last few days in particular as we've talked through getting this presentation done. So we're kind of tuned to that, Mr. Davis. At this time, I think we're moving on into the Office of Procurement and Contract section and the final section of the presentation. Sandra, are you going to start us off, our purchasing agent director, Ms. Sandra?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. The very first thing I want to do, I just want to thank the members of council for bringing this matter to our attention to address today, because there have been many times that I was hoping that we would get a chance to go over the process. We've done a lot over the years, but there still is a lot of room for improvement in this area. So thank you again for bringing it to our attention. A lot of things that have been covered so far are actually a lot about our large dollar procurements out of Columbia Water. But one of the things I want you all to also remember is that we do a lot of other things outside of Columbia Water. They're just typically the lower dollar amounts. So we want to cover a few of the stats with you today, the statistical information about that today. And we also want to brainstorm along with you all and encourage you all to also come up with some other ideas for us, because we want to make sure we're really targeting our local, our small, our women-owned and minority businesses, disadvantaged business enterprises. There's a vast amount of people out there that I don't believe that we're always capturing. And so our goal is to try to figure out ways to see what exactly are their needs, check and make sure we're understanding their offerings. This is a listing here of some things that we're going to go through. But even when they register, we want to make sure when they register, which is out on our Columbia website, columbiasc.gov website, when they register, we want to make sure they're not just picking all of the commodities. We want them to narrow it down, the focus down to what exactly do you do? Do you offer catering services? Do you offer janitorial services? It's not always just a Columbia Water type need. We have a part of our city, probably at least half, that is police and fire. So we have so many supplies that we're needing for those to keep the daily operations of the city going on in a proper manner. So we just want to make sure we're doing everything we can. We've worked hard with Melissa and her team over the years, and before that, even with Tina, to try to make sure that we are have a seat at the table to talk about these matters, to join your forces whenever you're going out on your outreach efforts. So we've done that, but we can still do more, even though a lot of it might be virtual, Melissa, but we're looking forward to continuing this dialogue, because I think that's what we have been missing, is just more and more dialogue and the continuation of the support that we're receiving from Council Ms. Wilson, Executive Management Team. So these are things that we're going to highlight. The very first thing on the list I just want to talk about is that we do have a procurement code. And the procurement code, it offers us some guidance about exactly how we're supposed to operate and to make sure that we're doing things basically legally. We have a regulation that sort of like goes into a few more details about the process of how we handle different type procurements. We're going to be bringing that to you most likely in September with a few updates, because some of the things we've had recently were some legal challenges. And thanks to legal, they have been helping us through each one, but we need to update our code. The code was done in 2011. I came aboard in 2012, and it's past time for updates. So we want to bring a few things at a time. We're not going to try to bring them all at once, but we do think some of the things really need to get addressed. Also, we're going to talk again about the statistics, because we do an awful lot of procurements, but there are some things that we have streamlined. So over the years, we used to do about 9,000 procurements a year, but they have dropped down because we have tried to work smarter. We've tried to come up with different ways that we're actually going about our procurements. And you're getting ready to hear a little bit more about that from some of my other managers. So at the very end, we also want to talk about some recommendations and some suggestions on how we move forward. The eBid module, we call it eBid Columbia SC, but actually is operated and managed by a company called IronWave that is right out on our website. Please direct people to look under services and they can take a look at our bid opportunities. But we can do more with that module. It's definitely a step up from the bid online module that we've had in the past, that bidders had so many problems trying to upload their documents. Half the time we'll go through a bid open and we couldn't tell who was the winner because all of their documents wouldn't load. So eBid is great. It has worked out fine for us. So we're going to try to expand that further. We use it now for over $25,000 procurements. We're going to start using it for lower dollar amounts. So also please encourage the constituents to let them know that, even if you do some little small procurements or they have some services, please take a look and get registered to be. We have two ways that you can do it. You can go out there and just always look for information, or we can push the information out to you. If you register under certain commodities, we automatically push the information. So they'll get some emails to say, this is what the City of Columbia is doing today. So please encourage them, if they could, to register through eBid. We also have ways that we're going to be talking about that we're going to further expand. Again, we want to target even some of our local business. I understand a lot of this discussion is going to the SMWBEs, but we just want to also encourage local participation in general. And the other thing is the continuation of the things like the qualified consultants listing. I'm going to let Kent Davis talk a little bit more about that. Clint, if you can advance the slide, please. Okay, these are some various procurement methods. I'm not going to try to go through each one, but I just want you all to know that we do have various methods that we use. We use, I would say, out of our procurements, we have the vast majority, over 90%, I would say, that are simple requests for quotes. They are informal. Most of them are under $5,000. You have a need for that day, we go out and we try to solicit for whatever services. We call those informal procurements. Ms. Wilson has the authority, she has delegated some to me to approve those small procurements. When it gets between over 25,000, we call those our formalized procurements. So we actually advertise for those. The two main places we advertise would be the state newspaper, and also it's a online type newsletter called the South Carolina Business Opportunities. Sometimes we call it SCBO for short, SCBO for short. But basically, people can pick that up and it goes all over the US. So sometimes you might wonder, well, how did some companies find out about our procurements in California? Well, because we advertise it throughout the United States. So again, most of the requests for quotes are simple quotes. We can even call for quotes. We can send out emails for quotes. our end users, because we have a decentralized process, most of our departments, they get the quotes, they put it in the system, it comes through our office for review, to our team for review, and to go ahead and make that award. And the formalized procurements, they're all handled through a centralized process where we take care of that through the Office of Procurement and Contracts. And then we have invitation for bids. Most of the different bids that are over $25,000 are low bids, right? We award based on the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. The difference is to be responsive, you did everything that we asked you to do. You sort of, we checked the boxes, you checked all of the boxes. But then there's a responsibility to all of our procurements, and we want to make sure that you're responsible for carrying out the services. All right, so you could say that's like a qualification phase, but you have to meet both. And sometimes you can tell on his face that they met it, and sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. And sometimes we even have to take certain things to legal. For instance, if a contractor is currently under a lawsuit with the city, that might be something we'll take the legal and we say, okay, help us through this. Is this a time that we'll go ahead and move forward with this award, or is this a time that we will hold up on that award? And again, because these are public funds, IFB low bid, when you meet all the other criteria, we pretty much try to go with low bid with public funds, okay? But there are times we don't. One of those is a request for proposal. Requests for proposal are used for, say, like if we were needing maybe like a new IT system here in the city. We don't exactly know exactly everything that we want, and we don't want it to be just based on price alone. So we will add in other criteria that we'll actually put some weights to, and then we'll make the determination of whether we'll move forward or not. Then there are things like janitorial services. That's what comes to mind. We want to make sure that you're qualified to handle the level of work. For instance, if you might have just your capacity is not built to the stage that you can handle doing like 50 different type buildings or floors or whatever we ask for you to do, but you can handle some small fire departments, then we want to make sure we make awards based on your capacity. So we'll break it up in little smaller lots for you to say, okay, you may not be able to handle all of the city buildings, but maybe you can take care of a few of our smaller buildings. So we put out something called a request for qualifications. We get you qualified based on that. And then we go ahead at the next step and get your price. So we do it in 2 phases, typically with requests for qualifications. There are some exceptions though. I'm going to skip the construction method because Gary's getting ready to cover that for you. But then I want to go to request for information. We like to use that as a tool. We don't use it as often as I think we could, but sometimes we don't know exactly what we want. We know where we want to get, but we don't know how to get there. So we have this tool that we can use that we will put out just an announcement, basically. It could be written or it could be in person. They can come, well, before COVID, they could come to the office and say that, please tell us, how can you help us address this problem? So we get that information in, and it helps us to craft the right solicitation under one of the other methods above. Emergency procurements, you'll know what those are here at the city. You'll actually sign off on those. You typically, after the fact, you'll ratify those for us, and thank you very much for that. Because we don't know when it's going to happen. So we have a process in place that we get it done through Ms. Wilson signing off on it, and we bring it to you all to ratify. Sole sources is not exactly a one source. Sometimes it's uniqueness, if there's a uniqueness factor to it, or there's one of a kind. Think about artwork. Another example would be an expert, like a legal expert in a field of something, that we would sometimes sole source things versus going through one of those other methods above. But again, IFB is the preference, or a request for quote. And the thing that we dislike are unauthorized procurements. What that means is somebody has went out and they committed the city without somebody saying it's okay for you to do so. So we try to keep those down. And I think in the city, we've done a fairly good job keeping them down, but we could still do better. And that's part of training, making sure everybody within the city understands you just don't go out and get something and then actually get reimbursed for it. All right, next is our procurement stats, and I'm going to turn it over to Beth March. Beth is our procurement manager for goods and services.
Hi, thank you. So today I'm going to talk about the PO information and payment stats. So if you look at this chart, you see the information for fiscal year 1920. And my team is responsible for all of the POs that get issued throughout the city. So any PO, regardless if it's Columbia Water, regardless if it's a project, my buyers, they issue those POs. So we have the total dollar amount of POs that were issued for 1920, which was $283,421,592. And then what was paid out. So we're still closing the books on 1920. So there is a little bit of a difference. So there are still departments closing out POs. But if you look at the bottom of this chart, it's interesting to see, we pulled a report for fiscal year 1920, and we just looked at vendors that are in the CSA area. And we actually paid out $97 million to vendors that are just in the CSA. So those would be considered local. They're not certified. We can't say that they're all certified LBEs, but they are considered local to us. Another interesting thing about this chart is if you go back and you take a look at the chart that OBO did, you know, the projects for MPP was 17 million and CDBE was 11 million. If you take that from the 164 million that was paid out, then that leaves you $135 million. $135 million that the city paid out actually went to somewhere else besides Columbia Water, small goods, projects that didn't have CDBE or any kind of program attached to it. So what my buyers do is when we have POs come in, we actually go and try to find to make Ms. Wilson's goal, the 15% goal that we have, the citywide goal. So if a PO comes in with one quote or requisition comes in with one quote, we'll go and try to find a local vendor, a DBE vendor that we can get a quote from. And if it's, you know, lower, then we'll go ahead and tell the department we're going to use this vendor this time. So we try to do that throughout when we get our requisitions in. So the rest of this chart, you can see it's for 18-19 and 17-18. Another thing that we do, the reason why the POs, we've had less POs, is because some departments have P cards. So there are certain things that they can buy on P cards, which is helpful for those emergencies. And then also we have open POs, which allow emergencies as well. Support services, if they're working at, 10 o'clock at night to take care of a water break in a bathroom, they do need to be able to go somewhere to be able to get those emergency needs. So that takes care of that slide.
Can I ask a quick question on this slide, Ms. Marsh? So I see the total PO stay pretty steady in the mid 6,500 range, but the total dollar amount jumps pretty significantly from 17-18 to 19-20. Is that because of our ramped up infrastructure upgrades and COLA water? What is the big? I'm imagining that's what the big jump in number is there. Does anybody have a quick summary on that?
Well, I'm not 100% sure. I think that some of it may be COVID related, because if you think of what we spent in COVID, we started in March, so our fiscal year ended in June. So a little bit of that may be in there. Also, they haven't finished closing the books in accounting. So right. As they close the books, any POs that are still open and haven't been paid out, finance goes through and they'll close those. So there may still be POs open that will never get paid against. But I am thinking that it's probably COVID related.
I don't know if Columbia Water can speak to that or what.
Yeah, I'll let Clint jump in if he thinks that may be the case. Again, these numbers reflect citywide. And, I really in 1920, Clint, if you want to jump in, the Columbia Water related projects may have been lower.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. I think part of what's happening is we're seeing the purchase orders that are associated with large construction projects that were awarded, but maybe that they're lengthy projects, so the amounts haven't been paid out yet. So even though we took a dip in the CIP in FY 19-20 from 120 million to 80 million, there were still projects in the queue that were put out the bid during that FY 19-20 period from older funding. And so I think that's part of what you're seeing there, I think, is contracts awarded that maybe were early in the contracting period. So large contracts, but the contract amount hasn't been drawn down yet. So that may be some of the difference, just thinking off the top of my head, between the amount that's, encumbered, if you will, with the PO versus what's been paid out, and that ramp up that you're seeing.
Amazing. Gotcha.
And I think Beth may be hitting on something too. I don't know the exact numbers from March to June on what we paid out for COVID related expenses, but there have been some significant COVID related expenses with PPE and other things that we would not normally obviously have had to pay out. As well as during the protests, there's some things that we've had to repair, obviously. And so, yes, sir.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so this next slide, it basically breaks down what you saw before, the POs that have been issued, but then it also tells you, so the first line is going to talk about the informal procurements under 50. Normally, anything under 25,000 is considered an informal. And then you have invitation for bids. So if we look at the 19-20 year, we had 6,169 purchase orders that were informal under 50,000. And then invitation for bids, we had 65. RFPs, we had 16. Requests for quotes, we had 4. Request for information 1. Now that doesn't come out of that total because we don't award off of request for information. Same thing with QPLs or qualified products or provider lists. We don't award off of that. And then we have the MPP applied at 23 and the CDBE applied at 9. And that actually should be 6. We need to make a correction to that. So we'll make that correction and send it back out. And then we have federally funded projects at 7, SOP at 1, formal cancellations at 7, and then rebids at 2. So this number doesn't include some things like sole sources, emergency, state contracts, cooperative agreements, and it also doesn't reflect any those are included in there. But the P card payments, credit card payments, and direct pays are not included in here at all. Those all go directly through finance. So these are only POs issued. So we just wanted to show you these types of numbers just to let everyone understand that there are a lot of dollars that go through the small procurements that run through our office, that we definitely try to help the end users to find, DBEs and things like that to make the better purchase, to get the money out and spread it throughout the city.
Yes, and to add to Beth's point on that is that what we try to do, we have a code that states that under $5,000 that we only have to have one quote by code. But again, I always tell people there's a big difference between somebody that might bid close to $4,000 versus somebody with $2,000. So the buyers are always encouraged that you need to check. You need to always make sure that the quotes are fair and reasonable. You don't want to just take any one person's quote for under 5,000. And the same process goes for things that are over 5,000, between $5,000 and $25,000. We do the same process. There's a 2 quote by code written minimum, but I do the same thing and say you add a 3rd quote, you do your searches on the internet, you make your phone calls, you try to check, and you try to first reach out to local, small, women-owned and minority businesses when you try to get that 2nd quote to verify your fair and reasonableness. And I want to also state that I apologize, but I sort of skipped over Gary Porth. He was going to just explain just a little bit about the construction procurement methods. Gary?
Thank you, Sandra. And I'd like to, again, thank you all for the opportunity to share with you today. And Sandra went over the procurement methods a little bit in her slide. Basically, invitation for bids, a request for proposals, or RFPs, and a request for qualifications, RFQs. And in construction, most of our work actually is for Columbia Water. We do a lot of water line work, a lot of sewer work, water plant, sewer plant, and also stormwater work. And that's the overwhelming majority of what we do. And most of yours, as you would imagine, most of our projects are done through invitation for bids. As Sandra mentioned earlier, invitation for bid is very clear cut. I like to say it's clearly defined what we're asking the bidder to give us a price on. So when we get bids, and we usually, normally we accept low bid, and that's what we go on because we are a public entity spending public dollars. And so we are bound to go with the low bid unless there's some well-documented past performance issues that we can move up from the low bidder. But again, we usually go with low bidder, and then it's always trying to look at the best interest for the city. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to serve the citizens and the taxpayers of the city of Columbia in the best way we can to get we want the biggest bang for the buck, if you will. So again, invitation bid is the majority of what we do. And even though this whole presentation is about increasing small women and minority business enterprise participation, I'd be remiss if I didn't reflect on two projects that I'm pretty proud of. And again, no disrespect to OBO and all the hard work, because we work very closely with OBO, with Melissa and Juliet and those and Latanya. But we had two projects that we just did this year that I'm very proud of, and they're over here in the building that we're located in on the first floor at 1800 Main Street. And even though one of these projects was the upfit for the Emergency Operations Center, who's moving over here on the first floor, and if you all, I know with COVID it's hard, but they're about to wrap that project up, and it really, really looks nice. But I wanted to say it was a CDBE project that we put out. And it was one of those that we didn't meet the CDBE goal. It was 16%. But the low bidder, as it turned out, was actually an African-American male-owned firm from Somerville, South Carolina, not a local firm in the sense of being in the CSA, the Combined Statistical Area, the 8-county region of counties around Columbia. But being in Somerville, and the guys, he's come up, and we actually had to do a little, coaxing to get him to take it, because he indicated he made a mistake on his electrical bid. But Ms. Sandra and I were able to get him to come, and he took it, and he's done a really, really good job on it. I think if you talk with Harry Tinsley or anybody else, and Richard Harrington is the inspector or project manager on it, they've been very pleased with the work they've done on it. And again, because it was a CDBE project, the Prime doesn't get any credit for being a minority business. And again, in this case, the Prime didn't get any credit for that, but they are a total minority. I mean, it's an African-American male. And then the sister project, if you will, to this one was a bid for the generator for this entire building over here. It was another project that we bid out, and it was a FEMA-funded project, 75% FEMA with a 25% city match. So there were no OBO programs associated with that one, because you can't have any local geographic preference programs on a FEMA or federally funded project. But the bids we got on this one, the low bidder on this project actually was a Columbia business, and they got it, and they're also an African-American male. And so they're a minority business enterprise as well. And those two projects totaled over $1 million. Again, both of them went to minority business enterprises. I'm very, very pleased with that. And again, that was just, it happened, and I'm happy it did, but that doesn't do anything with furthering our goal to get more minorities. But again, we are constantly aware of that. And as I said, work with OBO on every project that we do as to what kind of programs are attached and their methodology, and trying to go through it. And we're further trying to refine that and make sure we can increase our minority and disadvantaged business enterprise participation. That's what it's all about with us. So Sandra, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And I don't know if I need to send it back to Beth or to Kent.
Gary, I just want to make one statement. This is Melissa. I will say, though, that because there are minority vendors, maybe it didn't help our compliance related programs, but those actual numbers did help our citywide goal. So it counted towards our citywide goal. So it's still working towards the same end. So great. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. And
again, they've done a great job, Melissa. I mean, all indications from everybody I've talked to and what you see down there, they really, really have done a really good job. So I'm very pleased with that. And hopefully the one from Somerville, Sandra and I both had indicated to him, hopefully this is the first job he had done for the city of Columbia. And we hope maybe it's kind of getting his foot in the door, doing some more of these construction related kind of projects. So hopefully it will.
That's a really great point. And, I think telling our story a little bit more too across the city when we have those great opportunities to sort of happen that way would be helpful to encourage other that may not be local. I know we're shooting for local, but I do think when we talk about capacity of minority businesses, they may not always be local. I mean, and so I think that's another aspect that we need to continue to encourage as well, because we're trying to build that minority presence of people doing work in Columbia.
Yeah, Ms. Wilson, I saw Mr. Gillens, who's the principal for Quintech Solutions out of Somerville, who did the upfit. I actually just by chance ran into him when I was coming in the office about 2 weeks ago, and was able to have a conversation with him. And I expressed to him, you know, what a good job they were doing, and the good things I had heard about his work, and you know, from the people who are actually more actively involved in it than I am, and encouraged him that, you know, maybe he could do some more for the city. That would be a good opportunity for him to get in. And he expressed to me then he was already working with our architect, with Bob Probst, on some, I don't even remember what the project was now, but Bob had gotten him involved on doing some work on that. So I think that's great. You know, if we can kind of, like you said, spread our footprint a little bit and get some more. And not only, you know, success begets success, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So, you know, if we can continue to have those positive relationships and the word will spread, maybe we can, you know, increase our minority and DBA participation.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Ford.
All right, Sandra, I'll let you turn it back.
I'm turning it over to Kent Davis.
Well, thank you all for attending and allowing us to be part of this presentation. And I know we've been at it for a bit, so I'll try to work through this real quickly as well, but also be thorough. And one of the things that ACM Shealy noted about earlier is that one of the things we're doing on the professional services side is we're establishing some IDC contracts for urgent and unforeseen water repairs. And one of the nice things about that is it's going to give us the opportunity to be more flexible, as well as include some compliance programs. And with that, we are going to implement the under $100,000 MPP protege-led option within that. So that's going to give us a great opportunity to include some of those proteges to go ahead and take the bull by the horn and run with some of those options as well as opportunities. And that's one of the things we really work on doing is minimizing the response time. That when we get those requests, you know, it takes for RFP and RFQ, you know, you've heard a lot about price drives everything in procurement, right? It's always low price, and we have to be good stewards with the finances that we have. And so one of the things that an RFP and RFQ does is it really allows us to look at things. And always the necessary factor that we're very mindful of it. But it's one of those things, if price were the only thing, Motel 6 would be the #1 chain in the world, right? And so sometimes we want to have a Hampton Inn where we can go and work out and have a pool and have a continental breakfast. And that's one of the things that an RFP and RFQ does. It allows us to utilize different factors that are going to be much more important than just price. It is a part of the factor, but not the only factor. And it also allows us to streamline some of the processes. So one of the local stories here, last year, we were able to have one of our minority business owners award a contract outwardly on their own through an RFP for some water veil surveying. So that was a nice opportunity for them to participate, because it allows that firm that has the qualifications, they have the know-how, they have everything they need, but they just maybe don't have that necessary buying power to be the low price, but they have everything else. And that's what the RFQ and the RFP process really does. So the next thing we want to look at doing is, so we have that option and have that opportunity. We want to establish, we've got shortlisting, and we've moved the RFQ into a different kind of realm than what we've done in the past. So previously we had released an RFQ called Major Minor Wastewater Systems, and we just released another one. I think you all heard a little bit about it, called Major Minor Water Distribution. And what that does is this has been designed specifically to allow us to react quickly, as well as implement some of those programs through the OBO office. And again, this is a combined effort between everybody, Columbia Water and the OBO office and us. We've put together the solicitation to make sure that we're hitting on all fronts that we really need to. And so some of the things that have come out of Major Minor Water Distribution, we had 48 total responses. And within that, every one of those awards that are going to come out of Major Minor Water Distribution are going to be MPP related projects. So the major category is going to be the traditional MPP program. The minor program, or the minor category, is going to be the traditional MPP program, but it could also be protege led. And then we have a category specifically that are just protege only. In the wastewater treatment plant category was also a traditional MPP. So each and every one of those awards is going to have that minimum, at a very minimum, 20% participation from the proteges. And I know some of this conversation happened through some of the items that were on the July 21st agenda. And Ms. Wilson had noted that many of those projects that were on that agenda did have some of the MPP. And I went through and ran some of the numbers from the professional services side. We had 6 total agreements out of the previous wastewater major minor, and that was $1.6 million in awards, and $673,000 of that was just to the proteges alone. And then there was also some additional subcontracting amounts that went to MBEs, sorry. And then also with the new major minor wastewater distribution, we've got our first 2 awards coming out of that. We had one already on the July 21st council. We got another one coming up. That's 2.7 million, just a little bit over 2.7 million. Again, we've got over $550,000 that's going to go just to the proteges. And so this really allows us to kind of be the end all be all sometimes for pulling it all together. And it's just been a great opportunity to work together and again, pull these together. So I'm going to turn it back over to Sandra if there's not any questions.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I'm just going to try to summarize things that we have been discussing both with Columbia Water, the Office of Business Opportunity, and others. There are things that we can do. And again, I believe there are even more things, so you all please help us with this. But one of the things that Melissa and I have really been discussing is what else can we do on the front end to make sure everybody is very clear and understanding our solicitations. So we want to make sure, to the extent that it's legal feasible to do so, we want to make sure we include the information on the programs. You know, we might even have some links to where some other documents can be found. We are not going to try to just lead business to certain groups because, you know, that would not be within our guidelines to do so, but we want to make sure they know what exactly they would need to do to become a certified DBE or to qualify for the LBE program or any of the programs. So we can do a better job in our solicitations, and I'm going to work closer with OBO office to try to, and the legal office, to come up with ways that we can make sure that everybody understands the process. We need to slow down on some of our procurements in order to meet some of these programs, because some of our procurements, they actually require a length of time that could expand it up to 2 or 3 months in order to go through the process the way that we would really need to do it. And then sometimes that's why we have so many cancellations. In some cases, we have to cancel because we rush through the process, and then we have to rebid the procurement, which is not a good use of our resources. All right, the other thing is that we talk about breaking things down into economically feasible type units. There's a listing on the next slide, and I won't go through everything that's on that slide for sake of time, but there are certain projects in the realm of the professional services that we do want to try to, whenever it's possible to do so, to see if we can solicit for the professional services under various categories prior to, of course, moving on to the construction phase of the procurement. We want to make sure that we always establish attainable, because, you know, not every goal is exactly attainable and measurable. We want to make sure we're working on utilizing our module. It's called a CMM module, contract management module. It's tied into our financial database of IFAS. So we want to try to, and we've been working closely with some other departments, we're going to try to utilize that more. So whenever we are trying to increase our goals, we're going to try to measure it. We're going to put the information in the system. After we go through council, we get it approved, we start moving forward with the awards. We want to actually be able to spit out the data that will actually tell us that this is how much you awarded to the protege. This is how much they have gotten to date. You know, you might only have a few months left in the project. We want to make sure we're meeting the goals that we're setting. And I think that module is going to help us do it. And again, you'll be hearing a little bit more about that in the near future. And then there's the small quotes. And Beth, I would like for you, if you don't mind, if you're still online, can you explain a little bit more about what our team have been talking about how we're going to use eBid?
Yeah, so as we talked about eBid, most of our formal procurements go through eBid. So anything over $25,000, we do a formal solicitation and we send it out through eBid, and then we receive responses. So we've started talking about doing things under $25,000. So those under $25,000 requires 2 quotes, under 5,000 requires 1. So what will happen is when we get those requisitions in, when the buyers get them in, they'll sort of take a look at them and see if it's something that we could put on eBid as a request for quote, and we'll put a day or 3 days response time on it, and then we'll hopefully have a pool of vendors in eBid that can respond to that and give us quotes. And what we hope happens is it helps us to stop going to the same vendors all the time. There are lots of vendors out there within the city that if we don't know about them, we can't contact them. The departments don't know about them. So if people register in our eBid system, even for things like office supplies or things that are under $5,000, it's going to help us to spread that money throughout the city. Minority businesses as well. I've had 2 council members, Brenneman and Rickman, send me vendors. So I appreciate you all sending the vendors to us so we know who to go to. When COVID happened, I needed the vendors. I needed to know who had everything. So when these things happen, if you all send it to my team, we'll definitely make sure that we reach out to them. And we also want them to register through eBid to make sure that we do that. So the team they have been challenged with finding each buyer. They're supposed to find 2 opportunities to put on eBid. So we'll do that throughout August and see how it works. We're going to start with anything between 5,000 and 25,000. So if anyone needs help registering eBid that please let us know.
All right, thank you, Beth. And we're going to skip over the A&E professional services, but again, that was the slide that I was referring to earlier about possibly breaking down some procurements whenever it's economically feasible to do so. So now I just want to wrap up really quickly. Some of our suggestions is that we want to make sure we're always trying to build diversity and inclusion requirements into our solicitations and contracts. It's just the right thing to do. And honestly, we do spend a lot of time in trying to work on this effort. But again, we can always do better. We want to always standardize our wording as far as our affirmative action goals, and we want to include those into our solicitations as well. And we're going to continue to conduct our training sessions, both internally with our staff as well as externally, to make sure that everybody understands the process, the procurement process and contracting process. And we can always continue to update our database. We have 2 different databases right now. I won't go into that, but we have 2 separate databases here in the city. But we want to make sure we can't make it mandatory that the participants, the bidders, or anybody just interested in opportunities register and put their classification codes. So when we're talking about these numbers here today, the information is only as good as what is put in the system. So if they decide that they do not want to state whether or not they're African-American, male, female, Asian, whatever, then they do not have to do so. So as we're reporting this information is only based on those that were willing thus far to give us that information. But we want to work further with legal to update our commercial non-discrimination policy, because you can't discriminate in procurement. Okay, so all right, so the one more slide, I believe, or is that the end? Okay, that's good. Thank you all so very much for allowing the Department of Procurement and Contracts to present to you all today. Please feel free to ask any questions or to provide us with any other recommendations.
Andrew, I just want to say thank you to you and your team. I mean, you all are just, it's a lot. And I think just like I mentioned with the passion that Melissa and her folks show, you all do the same. I mean, it's really, I guess, I don't know, it makes me feel good when I see how much work y'all put into this. So thank you for that. Columbia Water folks as well. But I get to hang with them, but probably a little bit more than y'all on a daily basis. They may not be glad of that, but I do. And so I appreciate all of y'all. Thank you. Missy, are you going to sum us up with these opportunities that we've heard today?
I am. I think Councilman Rickman may have had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing everyone's hands.
That's okay.
Either everyone's face right now. I'm sorry.
Mine was more of a challenge, really, which is, procurement does, and I think Ms. Wright said that, one of the challenges is that they're timely and they take a long time, which causes opportunities for local people. I mean, they need to move. And so, one of the challenges I would ask is that we look at how do we streamline that procurement process and what can we do to help you all create a way to get procurement and RFPs and through the process in a quicker and efficient, effective manner that hits all this. And that's a lofty, question, and not something I want to answer today, but I do think it's something that we need to collectively work towards. And it's probably going to take some changes in ordinances. It's going to take, all branches of our government to work together here to come up with that. But I hear that a lot from a lot of the local business folks in all areas. It just takes so long to get from point A to point B. And, we've seen that with some of the procurements and they get complicated. I get it. But I think that should be one of our challenges in this next fiscal year is how do we make sure that we're doing everything to the letter of the law, but in a more effective and efficient manner that moves everything more quickly so that we can get people through the system and working on projects. And I'll put that challenge out there for you.
Challenge accepted. Thank you.
Okay, so Ms. Wilson, I will go through the final slides and then certainly any comments you want to make and questions, we will, as a team, certainly be willing to answer them. I think it's important to understand our history as we look forward to the future. I will tell you, a handful of us were here in 2006. The seeds for the programs we have today were planted with the 2006 disparity study. The programs that came out of that study would be the Mentor Protege Program and Subcontractor Outreach Program. Mentor Protege is still well in use and in place. It has been adapted to meet current needs and current times. And we've also born out of the recognition that a little bit different program was needed than subcontracting outreach in many occasions, the CDBE program. So that was really the basis for how we started this effort. And I say that to point out we have really came a long way. We've accomplished a lot since the first disparity study. We have a lot more to accomplish, and we know that, but it's important to recognize the importance that study played in our history and where we're going from here. I'm going to move to the next slide. We also, while we recognize our accomplishments, we're not satisfied yet. We know that we have a lot of work left to do. We're doing that across city departments. We're working collaboratively. I hope you've seen that today. This presentation was pulled together in pretty short order, and it's a result of how frequently all of our departments work together and connect. But we do recognize we need a new disparity study. We've talked about that for a long time. It's needed. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be easy, but the time is now. So we're ready to move forward with that. You'll see on the slide a little bit of the work has already started to get us ready for a disparity study, and we're moving forward with that. The next slide will show you some tentative target dates that this team has been working on how that process will happen. I will again say it won't be quick. Once we have a consultant on board, it will be 18 to 24 months before that study can be completed. We recognize we have to make changes and we have to continue to adapt while the study is going on. So we're preparing to do that. A lot of what you've heard today, in summary from all of the different departments, is talking about what we'll be doing at the same time we're moving the study forward. So I just want to hit some of those highlights real quick of what's going to be happening. Again, we're going to proceed with a disparity study. Prior to hiring that consultant, that contract will come back to council for approval. So I don't want you to take that as we're moving forward and there won't be any involvement from council, because certainly we will be updating you as that process moves forward. But we're excited. All of our departments are excited about what the study can help us with and the fact that we're ready to move forward. Many of the initiatives we've heard from council over the last few years about whether we have a gender-specific or a race-specific program. This study has to be in place before we can legally defend those type of programs. So it's important from a lot of measures. And in addition to moving forward with the study, you've heard a lot of interim measures that will be underway, including looking at all of the programs we have in place, looking at the projects and the purchases we'll be making, looking for opportunities to break projects into smaller units where applicable, really a stronger effort to make sure the good faith effort is being adhered to, making sure it's not subjective, and looking to put a method in place that we're making that determination of whether vendors met the good faith effort ahead of the bids being open. So we're really excited about that opportunity, as well as outreach to all of our vendors, not only our local vendors, but we're seeing a lot of national companies bid on our work, which is really good from a lot of standpoints. It helps our local guys sharpen their pencil a little, but it also gives us a larger vendor pool. But we want to make sure those vendors, as they're looking to come do work in Columbia, understand our programs and understand that we mean business. So we're certainly going to do some outreach there. Also some modifications with the MPP programs, looking to increase protege-only opportunities. We've successfully did several protege-only programs in the recent years, and we're excited about doing more of those. Also increasing opportunities for contracting with proteges and looking for, yes, ma'am.
You got a little bit more muffled. Can you maybe step back a little bit from the phone?
I can. Is that better, Ms. Devine?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And then also looking for smaller projects that we can work with proteges on. And we also want to ensure identification and tracking of the DBE business partners. So we're going to be looking at all of our databases and seeing how we can make sure that we're coding everyone correctly. And part of that starts with the vendor themselves, but we'll be doing some outreach and making sure that if we believe a vendor is not recognizing which bucket they fall into, that we reach out to them and suggest that they do, because it really helps our information and our data. And with that, I just want to say this is a team effort across city departments, with council, and throughout our community. We will continue to seek opportunities to cast a wider net to enhance awareness of our programs and to work to build capacities of our existing businesses as well as create new businesses. I think OBO does an excellent job at recognizing new businesses need to be supported in ways that existing businesses may not need. So we're working to do that as well. And with that, Teresa, we're going to turn it over to you and see if you have any last minute comments, and are there any questions?
Well, I thank you, Missy, the whole team, from the beginning to the end of this presentation, starting with Clint and then with Missy. Many of us on the call who didn't speak today as well, but all of the presenters are really tuned in to council's continue. This isn't anything new. I mean, this council and previous councils have really always made this subject matter a priority. We accept the challenge, Mr. Rickerman, yes, to streamline and try to make sure our processes are efficient. I think what happens a lot of time, if I might say this, when by the time procurement gets that bid to the point where they can finally move it forward, there's so much that has happened. Many of the things that we talked about today that I think some of these modifications we just went through may help with some of that streamlining that you mentioned. You know, this good faith efforts issue that's a time consuming thing sometimes. That's just one thing. And then there are several other things we mentioned today that I think will go to your point if we can implement some of those modifications, as well as, like you said, I mean, we'd have to get with legal to see if there's any other ordinance changes, but I heard you loud and clear on that. I think I just wanted to say, I think part of the discussion today, or a big part of it, is our acknowledgement of some modifications that might help by the time the projects get to procurement, because I I don't want it to seem like it just rests with them, any timeliness issues, because that's just not the case. But great team. I mean, we have the capacity. We're here to do the work. Just wanting to hear some directives and feedback from you all. Mr. Davis, I know you, you know, rightfully so, asked for some clarifications a few weeks ago. Does this help?
It's very helpful, and I think it's always good to know, and as well as the public know, that we do work as a unit on their behalf, and the things we do, the things you guys do, the team here, are guardians of their money, tax dollars, and it's going for a worthy cause. And you know, the end product is the quality of services, how we go about doing businesses, and how they feel about the city when they drive through different parts of the city. I appreciate everybody's input in this and the work you put into it. And I must tell you that the disparity study was number 2 on my list of things that I think we need to go towards. Actually, it'll be a revisit, but necessary. And we're looking forward to the tweaking that you guys are going to do, that you've alluded to during the presentations, the things that you're going to be doing to, you know, to substantiate what you're doing, and also to help us be what we're best at doing, and that is delivering services. And sounds like your efforts also are going to help us to keep some of the money in this area. You know, I always think about some of those dollars going elsewhere. I think one of the things, well, I don't want to get into that now, but as we continue to discuss what you're doing and what you need from us, I think one of the things that we would end up doing is making sure that well, just kind of making sure that we that we help to develop local talents here. I think that's probably one of your challenges, but I think there's some resources in this area that we and the people we want to do business with can take advantage of, so the qualification, you know, does not become a negative or perceived as a negative. But, you know, we just want to spread the money around locally. That's what makes us stronger. But I appreciate everybody's efforts. I'm sure Tamika does also, but it's a lot of work that's gone into this, obviously, and really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Tamika, we've been Zooming all day. I've got 1 at 4.
Yeah. You got 1 at 4, or were you late?
No, I've got it's at 2. Go ahead.
It's really late. Anyway,
that's going to be a long one, so I'm good.
Okay. I really don't have many questions. I've kind of had some independent conversations with several of you already, so I'm glad to see the acknowledgement of where we are, and I felt like it was probably time for us to redo the disparity study. Number one, just really also to do what you guys did, to see how far we've come, because I think what we'll do is say how far we have come, but also allow us an opportunity to look at moving forward. I was going to suggest, but I'm not sure timing wise if it works, considering that there are going to be several new members of county council coming on board. But in the last 2 years, I know that there have been some conversations regarding whether or not there's a value of doing a regional disparity study versus just the city of Columbia. Ms. Wilson, I don't know if you want to ask Leonardo if that has come up. I know several of his members have mentioned it to me in the past, but that might not be something they want to do, considering they've got new members coming on in January. But But if there is a point to do that, I think we'd be stronger together, and certainly would be good if we could implement certain policies together within our region. The only other thing I guess I would say is, I don't know how the RFP is written, but when we did the first one and we worked with Franklin, there was some language that encouraged him to partner with someone locally, or make sure his team was diverse. I've been doing some research on some teams that do disparity studies. I've shared with Melissa a couple of them. The thing that just concerns me is I don't see very diverse teams who are experts in doing this. And so, I certainly want to make sure that not only do we get, the best team as we do our RFQ and people put in bids, but I want to make sure that if we're talking about diversity and inclusion, that even the team who helps us look at it is diverse, and that means they partner with another firm or something else. I would like that to be part of what we put out in the RFQ. And then lastly, what I would just say is that, Ms. Wilson, you're to be commended for having the internal goal of 15%. I think clearly it shows that we continue to exceed it, that works. So, as Mr. Rickman talked about the challenge, I might challenge to see if you consider upping that so that the team at the city, goes more aggressive at trying to increase that to something bigger, and we keep pushing ourselves. We've done a great job, but I think, as we said, we can't rest on our laurels, and we certainly know that we can be an example for other municipalities and other local governments. I think we need to continue to push ourselves and challenge ourselves to increase that goal.
Challenge accepted.
Just one other thing for me, I'd like us to kind of get together again, maybe in a month and a half, to kind of see where we are with some of our discussions and some of the goals that you're working on. It'll be good for us to know that, so that we can continue to inform people that we're doing the right things. And it's a good team. I appreciate Tamika and Daniel's comments, and I think we're all on the same wavelength. We know what the goal is, we know what the challenge is, and we got a pretty good idea of what we need to do to reach those goals, whether it's collective ones or individual ones, and feel good about it.
Yes, sir.
Hey, can I say one thing, Councilman Davis and everybody? I am thank you for putting all this together, staff. Very informative, especially for me. But I am very excited about the IDC contracts and how it's going to change the way we approach coal and water, because that is the interaction a lot of us council members get, is that time period between the schedule of repairs. So very excited that conversation's been going on, and thank you so much for putting the nuts and bolts together on how to make that work between all the departments. I'm scared that I'm not going to have as much interaction with our residents because of that, but it's well worth it, the efficiencies of getting that done. So thank y'all so much.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Only thing, we are definitely in the process, Mr. Vine, with the disparity study. It's really going to be kind of a two-part. We're going to have a consultant that helps us with the preliminary work of pulling together everything that needs to be done for the RFQ, Sandra? P, ultimately, the big RFP. And I absolutely think that's an excellent point about, for such a study, we need to make sure there's a diversity and participation of helping us get that done. So that resonated with me. As to the regional approach to it, I would probably say we have some momentum now internally to get this done. And funding wise, I know the county, I'm happy to talk with Leonardo about it based off my ongoing discussions with him about a lot of things. I don't know that the timing will be right. I don't want anything to slow us down. So I do want us to move it forward. I would love for it to be regional. Without me asking him specifically about this, but knowing about a lot of other things they're working on, I don't know if it would be timely for them. We have talked about USC's participation too in the past, but I guess we're just ready to rock and roll. So I don't want anything to slow us down. Not that I don't want our partners to participate.
Yeah, by all means, I don't want to slow down either.
Okay.
So if you're ready, keep going. But if it's in the cards for someone else to participate, that's great too.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we'll kind of softly put our feelers out there about it, but we're going to keep moving forward as well. And with that, if you all don't have anything further for us, Mr. Davis, we will look to meet with you again in maybe 45 days, you said?
Yeah, I'm good. The four of us will talk. Daniel, okay. Mika, and I, and you.
Certainly. Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank y'all for all your work and for